The grocery bag slipped lower, and Marcus suddenly needed both hands to keep it from falling. At 68, Marcus Reed still took pride in carrying every bag from his car in one trip. That Saturday afternoon, 2 paper sacks rested against his chest while a third pulled at the fingers of his right hand. Warm air rose from the driveway. The bag handles rasped against his skin, and glass jars clicked together with each step. He made it halfway to the porch before his forearm began to tremble. The distance ahead was barely 20 feet. Marcus stopped beside the hood as if he had forgotten something. He set one bag down, pulled out his phone, and stared at the dark screen while his breathing grew louder. Across the narrow strip of lawn, Eleanor Whitmore heard the paper crinkle. At 65, she knew Marcus's routines almost as well as her own. He unloaded groceries on Saturday, waved if she was outside, and refused help before anyone offered it. Today, his smile arrived late. "Everything all right?" she called. "Just checking a message," Marcus said, though the phone had not lit up. Eleanor walked closer, her sneakers making soft taps on the concrete. Sunlight flashed off the car window, and the faint smell of warm bread escaped from the open bag at Marcus's feet. His fingers opened and closed against his jeans. Eleanor did not reach for the groceries. "That bag giving you trouble?" "Bad handle." Marcus lifted it again, but the paper handle was intact. His shoulder rose, his wrist bent, and after 2 steps he lowered the bag onto the porch rail. The landing was careful enough to look deliberate, yet a carton inside struck the wood with a dull thump. Eleanor glanced from the bag to his hand. "When did carrying groceries start requiring a rest stop?" Marcus gave a short laugh. "It doesn't. I'm just not 25 anymore." "Neither am I." Her voice stayed gentle, but she did not look away. Marcus picked up the remaining sack with both arms and carried it through the front door. The cool air inside touched the sweat along his temple. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed. The tile felt firm beneath his shoes, and the bag seemed heavier during the last few feet to the counter. He placed it down and flexed his aching fingers behind his back. Eleanor remained at the doorway. "You've been skipping those evening walks," she said. "Busy. And what did you eat today?" Marcus looked toward the groceries instead of answering. Breakfast had been coffee and toast. Lunch had been crackers eaten over the sink. There was food in his kitchen, but the silence made clear that being full and supporting strength were not always the same thing. Eleanor finally stepped back. "One difficult bag doesn't explain everything," she said. "But pretending it was the handle won't explain anything." Marcus watched her cross the lawn, then looked at the paper sack on his counter. A gallon of milk, 2 cans, a loaf of bread, and a few ordinary groceries had forced him to stop. He pressed his palm against the cool countertop and faced a question he had managed to avoid until now. If everyday strength was already slipping, what else might become harder next? Rubber soles squeaked across the polished floor as metal chairs formed a bright circle beneath fluorescent lights. 2 mornings after the grocery bag incident, Marcus Reed entered the neighborhood community center with Eleanor Whitmore beside him. The room smelled faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner, and cool air from a ceiling vent brushed the back of his neck. Marcus had made the decision himself. At breakfast, he had called Eleanor and said, "If you think I'm avoiding something, let's find out." Now a wellness instructor placed a straight-back chair against the wall and explained a simple sit-to-stand check. Cross the arms, rise without pushing off, sit with control, and repeat at a safe pace. Anyone with pain, dizziness, or medical restrictions should stop and consult a qualified healthcare professional. "Looks easy," Marcus murmured. Eleanor crossed her arms. "Then we both do it." She sat first, planting her white sneakers hip-width apart. At the signal, she leaned forward and stood. The chair legs scraped softly behind her. The first repetitions came smoothly, but soon her breathing sharpened. Her knees drifted inward, and on the next rise, one heel lifted from the floor. She completed the check, then gripped the chair back until her knuckles lightened. Marcus noticed. Eleanor noticed him noticing. "Balance isn't something I want to gamble with," she said, stepping aside. Marcus lowered himself onto the vinyl seat. It felt cool and slightly tacky beneath his palms before he folded his arms across his chest. The instructor started the timer. Marcus stood once, sat, and rose again. By the 4th repetition, his thighs burned. By the 6th, the room seemed louder, the ticking wall clock, the ventilation fan, the soft slap of his shoes. His body rocked forward to create momentum. When one foot slid several inches across the smooth floor, he unfolded his arms and caught the chair back. No one reached for him. He steadied himself, repositioned his feet, and stopped the test. The instructor did not diagnose the result. She explained that rising from a chair draws on leg strength, balance, coordination, and mobility, the same abilities used to climb stairs, get out of a car, recover from a low seat, and move confidently through daily life. Regular activity matters, she added, and adequate nutrition, including enough protein and energy, helps support muscle maintenance with age. Individual needs vary, especially with kidney disease, diabetes, swallowing problems, or other medical conditions. Marcus looked across the room at the exit door, its heavy silver bar glowing under the fluorescent light. Yesterday I thought this was about one grocery bag, he said. Eleanor rubbed the side of her thigh. And I thought I was only watching you. The chair between them had removed both excuses. Marcus could still stand, walk, and manage his home, but those ordinary freedoms now looked less automatic. Eleanor pulled a folded community center schedule from the front desk, then turned it over to the blank side. Before either of us buys special powders or starts guessing, Marcus said, taking a pen from his pocket, we write down what we actually eat. Eleanor held the paper flat against the cool countertop. Every meal, every snack, no editing. Marcus clicked the pen and drew a line down the middle. Tomorrow morning, he said, my kitchen. We find out whether our plates are helping our strength or quietly working against it. The refrigerator door swung open, spilling white light across a counter crowded with wrappers, cans, and the folded meal record. Coffee scented the warm kitchen, while the wall clock ticked above the soft hum of the cooling motor. Marcus stood beside the table as Eleanor placed his handwritten list between two ceramic mugs. You kept your word, she said. Coffee and toast yesterday morning. A bowl of vegetable soup at lunch. Crackers in the afternoon. Spaghetti with meat sauce at dinner. Marcus folded his arms. That sounds like food. It is food. The question is how it's distributed. Eleanor opened a cabinet instead of waiting for permission. Boxes of cereal scraped against one another as she moved them forward. She set instant oatmeal, crackers, and canned soup on the counter, then opened the refrigerator and added bread, orange juice, leftover pasta, and a small container of meat sauce. Marcus watched his private routine become a row of evidence beneath the bright overhead fixture. You planning to inventory the whole house? He asked. Only what you said we could review. Eleanor tapped the meal record. You're eating several times a day, Marcus. But most of these choices give you carbohydrates, fluid, or calories with relatively little protein. Nearly all the obvious protein yesterday was in that small amount of meat at dinner. Marcus reached for the sauce container. It felt cold and slick against his fingertips. Beneath the red sauce, only a few crumbles of ground meat were visible. I ate enough to stop being hungry. That isn't the same as giving your muscles useful building material throughout the day. Eleanor took 2 empty plates from the drying rack and arranged his recorded meals across them with the actual packages, toast and coffee on one, crackers and soup on the other. She placed the pasta container several inches away to represent dinner. Morning and midday looked bulky, but neither plate offered much obvious protein. Dinner carried almost all of it. The visual separation changed the argument. Marcus uncrossed his arms. Eleanor explained carefully that protein supplies amino acids the body uses to maintain and repair muscle, but needs differ from person to person. Older adults often benefit from paying attention not only to total protein, but also to including meaningful sources across meals rather than saving nearly everything for the evening. Medical conditions, especially kidney disease, or changes in appetite, chewing, swallowing, or digestion could require individualized guidance from a physician or registered dietitian. So I'm not starving myself, Marcus said. The coffee had cooled, leaving a bitter smell above the mug. No, Eleanor replied. But fullness has been hiding the weak spots. Marcus picked up the meal record, then walked to the refrigerator. He removed mustard, jelly, half a head of lettuce, juice, and several takeout containers, setting each item on the counter with a dull plastic knock. The shelves looked less abundant once condiments and leftovers were separated from foods that could make a substantial contribution to a meal. All right, he said. No powders. No miracle labels. We find ordinary foods I'll actually eat. Foods that fit breakfast, lunch, snacks, and dinner instead of leaving the whole job until nighttime. Eleanor slid the blank community center schedule beside him. Marcus drew 5 empty boxes across the back of the page, but left every box unfilled. By tomorrow evening, he decided, they would choose the first practical foods capable of turning those empty spaces on his plates into real support for strength, or admit that convenience still controlled his kitchen. By noon, the 5 empty boxes remained untouched beneath a film of flower-colored kitchen light. The air conditioner clicked on, sending cool air over the folded schedule, while a microwave meal turned slowly behind fogged glass. Marcus had promised to begin choosing practical foods, but convenience kept winning. He postponed the grocery trip, skipped the labels Eleanor had suggested comparing, and filled the next 2 days with toast, canned soup, crackers, and whatever leftovers required the least preparation. Each meal quieted his stomach. None changed the blank page. Eleanor did not reopen his refrigerator or make the decision for him. Instead, she returned to her own house and left Marcus responsible for the deadline he had set. Late Friday morning, his phone vibrated across the wooden table, rattling against a ceramic mug. His grandson's face appeared on the screen, bright beneath an orange baseball cap. "Grandpa, Mom said you might come with us tomorrow," the boy said. "We're doing the lake trail, then renting a rowboat. It's only about 2 miles. Marcus looked through the kitchen doorway toward the front steps. The trail itself did not trouble him as much as the parking lot, the uneven path, and the thought of climbing out of a low boat while his grandson waited nearby. He pressed one palm into his thigh. The muscle still carried a dull heaviness from the chair rise check. 2 miles, huh? There are benches, his grandson said. And I saved you the seat next to me. In the background came the zippering sound of a backpack and the crisp crackle of snack bags being packed. Marcus opened his mouth, then glanced at the 5 boxes. Not one contained a food. Not one meal that week had reflected the change he had promised to make. "I can't go this time," he said. The sounds on the other end stopped. "Are you busy?" Marcus rubbed his thumb along the rough edge of the table. "Something like that. Okay, maybe next time." The call ended with a soft electronic tone. Marcus remained seated as the microwave beeped behind him, once, twice, then again. Through the plastic window, pale noodles rested in a glossy sauce. The package promised a filling lunch in 4 minutes. On the chair beside him sat the community center schedule, still blank. A folded trail map his daughter had dropped off weeks earlier protruded from a stack of mail. Marcus pulled it free. Blue water curved around a green path, and a small black symbol marked the boat dock. He traced the route with one finger, then stopped at the printed photograph of a wooden bench overlooking the lake. The missed trip was no longer an abstract warning about future independence. It was a Saturday morning he would not get back, an empty seat beside his grandson, and a memory that would be made without him. The front screen door opened with a dry metallic rasp. Eleanor stepped inside after his brief invitation, carrying no groceries and no prepared solution. Warm outdoor air followed her into the kitchen, along with the faint scent of cut grass. Marcus placed the trail map beside the untouched boxes. "I told him I was busy," he said. "I wasn't. I didn't trust my legs to finish the day." Eleanor pulled out the opposite chair, but remained standing. Marcus took the microwave meal from the turntable. Steam dampened his fingers, and the salty smell rose as he peeled back the plastic. Then he carried it to the trash, stopped, and set it unopened on the counter instead. Wasting food would not rebuild anything, but repeating the same choice would cost him more. He pushed the 5-box sheet toward Eleanor. "Tomorrow morning is too late," Marcus said. "Before my next meal, I choose the first 2 foods, and this time, they have to earn their place." "Then let's choose them now," Eleanor said, sliding the sheet back across the table. The microwave fan whispered behind her, and the unopened meal released a salty, peppery scent through its loosened plastic. Marcus capped his pen, took his car keys from the counter, and placed the trail map beneath the 5 empty boxes. 20 minutes later, the supermarket's automatic doors opened on a rush of refrigerated air. Shopping carts clattered over gray tile, fluorescent light gleamed on stacked cartons, and Marcus walked past the supplement aisle without slowing. Eleanor followed half a step behind, leaving the cart in his hands. At the egg case, he lifted a dozen large eggs and turned the carton over. "First box," he said. Eggs offered complete protein in a familiar, versatile form. Marcus could boil several at once, scramble them with vegetables, or pair them with whole grain toast and fruit instead of expecting toast alone to carry breakfast. The yolks also supplied nutrients, while the protein came from both the whites and yolks. Still, Eleanor reminded him that portions and preparation should fit the individual. Anyone managing an egg allergy, specific cholesterol concerns, or another medical condition should follow guidance from a qualified healthcare professional rather than copy someone else's plate. Marcus placed the carton in the cart. Its cardboard felt cool beneath his palm. "I can cook 2 eggs faster than I can pretend crackers are lunch," he said. At the dairy case, rows of containers glowed behind misted glass. Marcus reached toward a sweetened yogurt, paused at the nutrition panel, then compared it with a tub labeled plain Greek yogurt. The thicker yogurt generally provided more protein than many standard varieties, and it required no stove, knife, or long preparation. It could become breakfast with berries and oats, or an afternoon snack with fruit and a small handful of nuts. "Second box," Marcus said, lowering the cold tub beside the eggs. Eleanor pointed to the ingredient label. "Plain won't work if you hate every bite." Marcus chose a lightly sweetened Greek yogurt as well, planning to test both rather than build a routine around food he would abandon. For people who do not tolerate lactose or avoid dairy, Eleanor noted, lactose-free Greek-style products or other higher protein alternatives might be more suitable, though labels vary widely. Diabetes, kidney disease, allergies, and other health concerns could also change which product, portion, or protein target made sense. Back in Marcus's kitchen, the skillet warmed with a faint metallic tick. Butter hissed at the edge, eggs turned into soft yellow folds, and toasted bread scented the room. Marcus spooned Greek yogurt into a small bowl and added blueberries, their skins cool and taut beneath his fingers. This was not a dramatic feast. It was a breakfast he could repeat. He filled the first 2 boxes on the community center sheet, eggs and Greek yogurt. Then he placed 3 eggs in a saucepan to boil for later and moved the yogurt to the front shelf, where it would not disappear behind takeout containers. Eleanor tasted 1 spoonful of the plain yogurt, tightened her lips at the tang, and reached for the berries. This time, she adapted beside him instead of directing him. Marcus sat down to eat while the saucepan clicked softly on the burner. 2 choices had crossed from paper into his actual day, giving breakfast and snacks practical sources of protein. But 3 boxes remained empty, and Eleanor's own lunch record still showed the same thin soup and crackers she had criticized in his kitchen. Marcus turned the sheet toward her and tapped the blank 3rd box. "I made my choice," he said. "The next one is yours." The refrigerator motor stopped, leaving the kitchen quiet except for 3 eggs knocking softly inside the simmering saucepan. Eleanor looked at the blank 3rd box, then reached into her purse and removed her own meal record. The paper crackled beneath her fingers. For 4 straight lunches, it showed nearly the same thing. Vegetable soup, 6 crackers, and coffee. "I kept calling it convenient," she said. "But I was using convenience to avoid changing anything." Marcus did not offer to choose for her. He turned off the burner, and a ribbon of steam curled into the warm light above the stove. Eleanor opened Marcus's pantry, took out the crackers, and set them beside her record. Then she folded the paper around the sleeve and pushed both to the far end of the counter. She was not banning crackers or wasting food. She was giving up their old job as the center of her lunch. That afternoon, Eleanor returned with a foil-wrapped salmon fillet and 2 cans of no-salt-added lentils. Cold air followed her through the screen door, carrying the damp smell of an approaching rain shower. The salmon package landed in the refrigerator with a soft slap. The cans met the counter with 2 firm metallic knocks. "3rd box," she said, writing salmon. Salmon offered high-quality protein, and it also supplied omega-3 fats. Those fats support overall health, but Eleanor kept the claim in proportion. Salmon was useful food, not a treatment, and not a guarantee of stronger muscles. Fresh, frozen, or canned salmon could all work, depending on budget, sodium needs, and access. People taking blood-thinning medication, managing kidney disease, or following another medically prescribed diet should ask a qualified clinician what portions and frequency fit them. Eleanor heated the oven to 400 degrees, brushed the fillet with olive oil, and added pepper and lemon. Soon the kitchen filled with a clean citrus scent, and the fish separated into moist pink flakes beneath her fork. Marcus watched from the table while she divided it into 2 containers, one for today and one for tomorrow. This was her choice, her preparation, and her departure from the lunches she could assemble without thinking. Next, she opened a can of lentils. Water rushed over them in a mesh strainer, carrying away some of the canned liquid. "Fourth box," she said, writing lentils. Lentils brought plant protein, fiber, and useful nutrients to the plant. They would not provide as much protein per serving as some animal foods, but they could make lunch more substantial, especially when combined with vegetables, whole grains, or another protein source. Their fiber could support digestive and heart health, although someone unaccustomed to legumes might begin with a smaller portion and increase gradually while drinking adequate fluids. Medical conditions affecting potassium, digestion, or carbohydrate management could require individualized advice. Eleanor warmed the lentils with chopped spinach, garlic, and a spoonful of broth. The pan gave a gentle hiss. Garlic scented the room, and the mixture thickened into something that would stay on a fork instead of disappearing like thin soup. She packed it beside the salmon and snapped the container shut. The sacrifice was small in appearance but real in practice. A few more minutes of planning, a higher grocery cost for salmon, and the loss of a lunch routine that had demanded nothing from her. In return, 2 foods now covered meals Marcus's breakfast choices could not. Eleanor placed both containers in the front of her refrigerator at home, then carried the 5-box sheet back to Marcus's kitchen before the rain began tapping against the windows. 4 spaces were filled. 1 remained. She laid down the pen and pushed the page toward Marcus, reversing his challenge without taking back control. "Breakfast and lunch are no longer empty," she said. "But if the 5th food is only another name on this page, what makes the whole day actually support muscle?" Rainwater traced silver lines down the kitchen window while the 5-box sheet waited beneath Eleanor's hand. Marcus opened the freezer, and cold air curled around his wrists as he removed a package of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. The plastic crackled in the quiet room. "Dinner needs something I can portion, refrigerate, and use more than one way," he said. "Chicken breast." He wrote the words in the final box with one decisive stroke. Chicken breast offered lean, high-quality protein and could fit into salads, sandwiches, soups, or a plate with vegetables and whole grains. Marcus placed 1 piece between sheets of parchment and flattened it to an even thickness. The mallet struck the cutting board with steady, muffled taps. Soon olive oil shimmered in a skillet, pepper and garlic warmed the air, and the chicken gave a sharp hiss when it touched the hot surface. Marcus had found an efficient answer for dinner, but as he looked at the completed row, eggs, Greek yogurt, salmon, lentils, chicken breast, his shoulders loosened too soon. "There," he said. 5 foods. Problem handled." Eleanor drew the paper away from the stove before a drop of oil could stain it. "No, the shopping question is handled." Marcus turned down the heat. "What's the difference?" Eleanor took 4 clean plates from the cabinet and arranged them from morning to evening. On the first, she placed a boiled egg beside an empty yogurt bowl. On the second, she set the lentil and salmon container. On the third, she placed a spoon to represent a snack. On the last, Marcus laid the cooked chicken breast, its brown surface steaming beneath the overhead light. "If these foods stay unopened, or if you crowd most of them into dinner, they're only inventory," Eleanor said. "Muscle doesn't appear because 5 good foods entered the refrigerator." She moved the egg and yogurt toward breakfast, left salmon or lentils at lunch, and assigned the chicken to dinner. A smaller serving of Greek yogurt or a boiled egg could fill the snack gap when appetite and medical needs allowed. The principle was simple: include useful protein at more than one meal, while still eating enough total food to meet energy needs. A plate overloaded with protein but short on calories, vegetables, fruit, whole grains, and healthy fats was not a complete plan. Individual protein targets differed with body size, activity, appetite, and health conditions. Kidney disease or other medical concerns required personalized guidance rather than a universal number. Marcus sliced the chicken across the grain. The knife tapped the wooden board, revealing a moist white center. "So even the right foods can fail if I use them the wrong way. And food can support muscle maintenance," Eleanor said, "but it cannot replace the reason muscle stays useful." She stepped to the kitchen chair, crossed her arms, and performed 1 slow sit-to-stand repetition. Her shoes pressed into the tile. The chair gave a faint creak as she lowered herself with control. Muscles need a reason to adapt. Safe resistance exercise gives them that reason. Food supplies support for the work. Marcus set down the knife. The completed list no longer looked like a finish line. It looked like one side of an agreement. Eating enough, distributing protein across the day, and doing appropriate strength training had to work together. Walking remained valuable for health and endurance, but strengthening the legs, hips, back, chest, shoulders, and arms required progressive resistance suited to their abilities. Anyone new to exercise, unsteady on their feet, or managing pain or a medical condition should seek appropriate professional guidance. Marcus divided the chicken into 3 glass containers, added vegetables and brown rice, and snapped each lid shut. Then he faced Eleanor across the counter. "We've chosen the food," he said. "Tomorrow, we decide whether we're willing to do the work that makes those choices matter." A printer chirped at the community center, then pushed a warm registration form into the tray. Morning light gleamed across the front desk, and the rubberized floor carried the clean scent of disinfectant. Marcus stood with a pen above the signature line for a supervised beginner strength program. The schedule required 2 mornings every week for 8 weeks. Paying the fee meant giving up part of the casual routine he controlled in retirement. Signing meant placing his progress under qualified supervision instead of trusting pride and guesswork. He read the safety questions, listed the medications he took, and checked the box agreeing to seek medical clearance if the program staff required it. Then he signed. The wellness instructor reviewed the form and explained that sessions would begin with manageable resistance, careful technique, and gradual progression. Pain, dizziness, unusual shortness of breath, or other concerning symptoms were reasons to stop and seek appropriate medical advice, not signals to push harder. Marcus slid the completed form across the counter and added the first session to his phone calendar. Across the lobby, Eleanor made a separate call. Instead of copying Marcus's portions or selecting an arbitrary protein target, she scheduled an appointment with a registered dietitian to discuss her usual intake, medical history, medications, appetite, and activity plans. The appointment cost money and required her to surrender the comfort of deciding that general advice was automatically right for her. When the receptionist confirmed Tuesday at 10:30, Eleanor repeated the time, entered it into her calendar, and pressed save. Neither commitment could remain an idea now. Back in Marcus's kitchen, 7 index cards spread across the counter beneath the amber pendant light. The refrigerator hummed, a hard-boiled egg tapped against a glass bowl, and lemon still scented one of Eleanor's meal containers. She wrote a day of the week on each card. Marcus arranged the 5 foods across the schedule, not as competitors for a single winning place, but as tools for different meals. Monday began with eggs and whole grain toast, followed by lentil soup at lunch and chicken breast with brown rice and vegetables at dinner. Tuesday used Greek yogurt with berries and oats for breakfast, leftover chicken at lunch, and salmon with potatoes and green beans in the evening. Lentils returned in a salad on Wednesday. Eggs became a quick Thursday breakfast. Greek yogurt filled a practical snack gap on Friday, while canned salmon offered a lower-cost lunch option. They repeated ingredients on purpose, using leftovers to reduce preparation and expense. Fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats remained on the cards because protein alone could not provide adequate energy or make the plan complete. Marcus placed his supervised exercise mornings beside breakfasts he could prepare quickly. Eleanor left blank spaces around her dietitian appointment so professional guidance could change portions or substitutions without collapsing the entire week. They also wrote alternatives for real life. Lactose-free higher-protein yogurt if needed, lower-sodium lentils, frozen or canned salmon when fresh fish cost too much, and other appropriate protein sources if allergies, medical advice, or preference ruled out one of their 5 choices. By late afternoon, every card held meals they could recognize, shop for, and prepare. Marcus fastened the 7-day plan to the refrigerator with the trail map magnet. Eleanor set the strength program receipt beside it and placed her appointment confirmation underneath. They had traded complete freedom to postpone for dates, costs, and accountability. Marcus opened his first calendar alert. Monday, 9 a.m. Eleanor checked Tuesday's appointment once more. Their foods were organized, and professional support was booked. What remained unanswered was whether those commitments, repeated when no one was watching, could restore enough confidence for Marcus to accept the next invitation instead of surrendering another day. 8 weeks later, the trail map fluttered beneath its magnet as a phone vibrated against the kitchen counter. Warm cinnamon scented the room, a skillet whispered on the stove, and morning light fell across 7 index cards softened at the edges from daily use. Marcus answered the call, listened, then looked toward Eleanor. His grandson was returning to the lake. The same 2-mile trail. The same rowboat dock. This time, Marcus did not measure the invitation against his pride. He measured it against 8 weeks of supervised chair rises, resistance bands, controlled step-ups, and meals he had actually eaten. Save that seat, he said. Eleanor lifted her insulated lunch bag from the table. Following guidance from her registered dietitian, she had adjusted portions to suit her own health needs rather than copying Marcus. Inside were a lentil salad, Greek yogurt, berries, and water. Marcus packed 2 hard-boiled eggs for breakfast on the road, then added a chicken sandwich for lunch. Salmon had been dinner the night before. The 5 foods were no longer boxes on paper. They had become flexible parts of ordinary meals, spaced across real days, and supported by enough food and regular strength work. At the lake, gravel crunched under Marcus's shoes, pine needles released a dry, resinous scent, and sunlight flashed between the trees. His grandson moved ahead, then slowed. Marcus kept a steady pace without pretending the incline was effortless. At the first bench, he stopped for water because he chose to, not because his legs had forced the decision. Eleanor sat beside him and opened the yogurt. "How are the knees?" Marcus asked. She planted both feet and rose from the bench without using her hands. "Still mine," she said, brushing crumbs from her white pants. "And better supported." At the dock, the rowboat rocked against rubber bumpers with hollow wooden knocks. Marcus handed down the lunch bag, gripped the rail, and lowered himself onto the seat with controlled legs. His grandson slid in beside him, exactly where he had promised months earlier. No single meal had produced that movement, and no food could guarantee the same outcome for everyone. Eggs had given Marcus a practical protein-rich breakfast. Greek yogurt had made snacks and rushed mornings easier. Salmon had contributed high-quality protein and omega-3 fats. Lentils had added plant protein and fiber to lunches. Chicken breast had supplied a versatile lean protein for dinners and leftovers. Used consistently, in portions suited to individual needs, those foods helped support the muscle that training asked his body to maintain. They had not cured aging. They had helped Marcus and Eleanor stop leaving strength to chance. After the outing, the grocery bags in Marcus's trunk held those same familiar ingredients. Eleanor reached for one, but Marcus lifted it first, tested its weight, and handed her the lighter bag, not to prove he needed no help, but because independence no longer meant doing everything alone. Together they crossed the driveway as jars clicked inside the paper sacks, and evening air cooled their faces. In the kitchen, Marcus returned the trail map to the refrigerator, this time with the date written across the completed route. Beside it remained the 5-food sheet, stained with olive oil and marked by use. What had begun as a list of protein sources had become something larger, a deliberate way to nourish the work, protect daily capability, and keep saying yes to the life their strength still made possible. The bags were still ordinary, but Marcus and Eleanor no longer treated the strength to carry them as ordinary luck.